All right, now still looking at economic developments, we're talking about the train or the iron horse. That's a picture of one in Vermont. Steam-powered locomotives just allowed people to move mass amounts of goods and products across country. And really, they go anywhere where the track was laid. Um, they helped really settle the West, and they brought expansion out there, and you could really trace the development, economic and political development of areas as the trains came through. You could move goods much quicker than you could on wagons, and you could get goods to places where you couldn't necessarily on water. So very important to the development of our country was the train and the iron horse. Samuel Morse now developed something called the Morse Code. It's a series of dots and dashes, and it allows people to communicate across vast space and time. You could easily relay news that was going on. You had people who were fluent in Morse code. By 1850, this develops in the early 1800s or mid 1800s, excuse me. By 1850, you had about 50,000 miles of telegraph wire. So instead of having to wait on a letter, now you could electronically communicate that information thanks to Samuel Morse. As we look through, you see a big shift, particularly in the north, towards industrialization and the Industrial Revolution. So companies and factories and people really shift from making things with hand tools to really big, complex machines, big looms that made fabric, things like that. You're able to make a higher quantity, and usually you sacrifice a little quality, but you could make more product quicker than you could if you're making it by hand. Okay, so you stopped having really independent contractors and individuals working, and you gave way to more of a factory workforce. Okay, and all those factories, mills, all that stuff replaced kind of the home-based shops in individual areas. Okay, that mainly develops in the north. One of the big products is the cotton gin. And what this allowed to do is pretty simple. It removed seeds from cotton and allowed cotton to be processed quicker. Cotton was very, very labor intensive in order to get all the seeds out. It really didn't pay a whole lot because it took so long to get them out. So cotton gin works simply by feeding the raw cotton here, or it would go through basically a series of tumbles, separate the seeds, and go through and be pressed together to come out with nice bales of cotton, which then could be shipped off and manufactured into clothes. Okay, this is another big thing that used cotton to spinning jenny. So it allowed one person, just by spinning this wheel and pumping a loom, to manufacture cotton into cloth. And what that did was you could make mass quantities of cloth, you could color it, and then you could sell it or make clothes out of it in a much more efficient way than you could before. Um, America finds itself during this time, much like the world, in a period of industrial revolution. Now, it already had been going on in Britain and really spreads to America after the War of 1812. And one of the big things that happened there was the British blockaded the east coast of the United States. Um, and the war was relatively short, but that blockade forced Americans to be more resourceful and forced Americans to industrialize more because they couldn't import all of the goods they needed. Um, Consequently, one of the biggest people that they traded with was Britain. So that stopped. We had to become more reliant, and therefore it sparked really an industrial revolution. Um, this American free enterprise also develops with the idea of competition, private property rights, and people being able to spend their money how they choose in order to really spur economic developments. The idea is that competition between companies and entrepreneurs are going to create new and better qualities for consumers and will help expand the economy as well. So you have some government involvement, but not a lot. Okay. Another idea of the Industrial Revolution is this concept of interchangeable parts or standardized pieces, which I think we've come really take for granted now. If you need a certain screw, you could go find it and you can get probably 100 of them if you want, and that screw could fit in multiple different products. At this time, it wasn't so. This is a new idea. So people started to produce goods using standardized machines and standardized pieces. So you'd order a part, you wouldn't have to order a whole new machine, and the ability to manufacture that part was greater because it was simple and you could be used really across categories. At first, the idea of interchangeable parts was really used to produce things like lumber, shoes, wagons, things like that. So you could just take a tire off, put a new one on. They were all the same size. They all fit the same. Okay. And what this leads to is urban growth because factories are needed to manufacture those parts. The idea of interchangeable parts also comes down and focuses on the workers. Okay. Meaning workers are now seen as interchangeable. So if somebody gets sick, can't work, doesn't matter. They'll just go get another worker. Workers weren't specialized. You could take them out and put them in wherever you wanted. And that idea really boils on down to the workers, which causes eventually a lot of problems in America. Finally now, the South develops more agriculturally. They don't have a lot of industrial cities, but they do grow a lot of crops. Main ones are tobacco and cotton. And they're really produced by a very small percentage of slave-owning, wealthy plantation owners. The South at this time is full of poor white farmers who didn't own any slaves. There's the expansion of slavery is really done by a minority of the population that has a lot of money. And what the South would do is they take these products and they would ship them to the North where they would be manufactured into clothes and then sold back. So the South really is not a manufacturing center. It's more of an agricultural center. And we'll stop there, and this will be the first slide of section 3, talking about slave labor. Thanks, guys.